Hi, dear friends. It's wonderful to be with you again. I pray this finds you well in mind, body, and spirit. This week, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the lesson from Acts that we'll hear on Sunday that talks about Jesus' ascension into heaven. While I study for these texts, I tend to read them from 3 different interpretations or translations. The first is my HarperCollins Study Bible, one that I use throughout college. My Message interpretation or translation that uses a little bit more modern language that I often use with the youth. And I've started reading them from a children's story Bible. In fact, this week I'm going to be using this children's story Bible in this youth and family devotional video because I think it just gets to the point. Let's get into the story. After Jesus died and rose again, he and his disciples got together near Jerusalem. Jesus had some instructions for them. As you know, God is doing amazing things in the world, he said, and your help is needed. We need you to go tell stories about me. Tell your friends and family and everyone you meet what you've learned by following me. Be my witnesses in the world. Then suddenly, Jesus was rising up in the air. What was going on? He was being lifted up into a cloud. Jesus' friends looked around. 2 men in white robes had joined them. The men said, "Why are you just standing around looking up toward heaven? Don't worry. Jesus will come back someday." "Right," said one of Jesus' disciples. "Meanwhile, we have some work to do. Let's get going." I don't know of anyone that fully understands Jesus' ascension into heaven. This, among many other biblical stories, beg the question, what are we supposed to do with these texts that we don't fully understand? I feel a bit like Thomas while reading this story. He demands to see the wounds in Jesus' hand and side. I want to see this cloud-like mobile that Jesus got beamed up to heaven on. I adore the 2 angels who appeared response to the disciples like you and I staring up into the sky wondering what the heck just happened. These 2 unnamed angels snap us back to reality. Why are you just standing around looking up toward heaven? Don't worry, Jesus will come back someday. Their words carry that assurance, that reminder, that even though Jesus has been telling us for weeks that he will not leave us orphaned, that Jesus is sending an advocate on our behalf, these 2 angels proclaim God's promise to us again in perhaps our most vulnerable state. Because despite the last time Jesus told us he was fulfilling the scriptures, dying and rising 3 days later, this departure of Jesus doesn't have a timetable. We aren't warned about how long Jesus, in his physical form, will be gone from us. The children's Bible continues. "Right," said one of Jesus' disciples. "Meanwhile, we have some work to do. Let's get going." I imagine the disciples' jaws were dropped, maybe some drool coming out of the sides of it, and one of the disciples saying this in an attempt to make it look like they knew exactly what they were doing. While I do want to caution against believing in a works righteousness type of faith that this scene might, upon first look, beg, I want to frame it in a different way. That even though we don't have all of the answers, that even though we can't explain or understand every minute detail, Jesus still entrusts us with living out the good news in our thoughts, words, and deeds. Jesus calls us by name. In our jaw drop to the floor, drool coming out of the sides of our mouth, awestruck in head-scratching confusion anyways. And what a gift, what a privilege it is to be called just like that. Called to be love. It's wonderful to be with you again, dear friends. I am sending big non-social distance hugs your way. I'll see you next week.